Hey, you two. It's Arwen, the professional joy seeker, professional tarot consultant, and published author. And this is part of my ArwenWrites series, in which I am shamelessly plugging the book, Mapping the Hero's Journey with Tarot 33 Days to Finish Your Book. I'm getting some fun reviews over on Amazon, and if you've got the book, please go review it. Honestly, I want honest reviews. Don't blow smoke up my skirt, y'all. We are talking tonight, and I forgot to ask her how she pronounces her name, so I'm going to say it how I think it is, and she can correct me. I believe it's Seana, or is it Seana?
Shauna.
Shauna. I wasn't even close.
Like the boy's name Sean with an A.
Thank you. This is Shauna Kelly. Shauna is a debut author with the Harlequin line, and for those of you that aren't in the romance genre, that is like the big golden glow. I mean, it's a big deal for most of us. It's like what everybody strives for, because Harlequin has always been I don't even know what the word is. It's iconic. It's the very first romance I ever read was a Harlequin. Now, Shauna, tell us a little bit about you and your just how you write and what you write.
Well, I write contemporary romance, which is what my debut is, sort of small town romance. I also write urban fantasy, paranormal romance. And I've been doing it for a while. I work full time. I'm a high school teacher librarian, so I don't have a whole lot of time for writing, unfortunately. I usually do it first thing in the morning while everybody is asleep. And I've been working on it for a few years, and luckily, I was a Golden Heart finalist in 2015 and 2016, and the one of the final judges was a senior editor at Harlequin. So she was one of the ones who read my entry and then asked if she could please have the whole thing. And then a week later, they were on the phone asking if they could buy my book. So that was awesome.
A week later?
Yep.
That's like a Cinderella story. Wow, that's awesome. Now, I have to admit, I have not read the book. It just came out. It's been out, what, 10 days now?
Exactly right.
And tell us a little bit about your characters. Now, first, who am I going to be doing the reading for? Is it a book that you're working on, or is it the book that's out?
No. It's a book that I'm working on. I'm having issues with a character that I would love help with.
Okay, awesome. So tell us a little bit about your book. Tell us a title and kind of where did you get the idea from?
Well, it's the title is Welcome Home, Katie Gallagher. And as I said, it's a small town romance. It's a romantic comedy. It's set in Bar Harbor, Maine. And it follows Katie Gallagher, obviously, who is leaving a very bad relationship, a bad marriage. And her grandmother has recently passed and left her this little cottage in Bar Harbor. And Katie realizes that marriage hasn't stopped her husband from dating. And so she's decided that she's going to hit the road with her Newfoundland dog. If anybody knows what those are, they're massive water rescue dogs. And they head out across country. And when she gets to Bar Harbor, she realizes that little cottage that she used to visit all the time isn't quite as perfect as she thought, because grandma's been gone for a little while and nobody noticed that back windows have been left open. So it's infested with lots of forest creatures and all the rest of it. And our hero is the police chief, who used to have a crush on Katie when they were younger, and is now sort of smarting from his fiance dumping him right before the wedding. So he's sort of down on women in general.
Oh, nice. So he gets dumped and then old Flame shows up.
Exactly. And then Katie shows up into town.
Yeah, I wouldn't want, I'd be like, okay, girl, you need to go. Not now. Okay, sorry, y'all. Sounds like a Hallmark movie. Yes, it does. And hopefully one day it will be.
One day.
A lot of romance authors have done, Hallmark movies, and the Hallmark Mystery Channel just featured movies by, I can't remember her name, but she's in Pan with us. She's and that's where I know Shauna is from the Pan version of RWA, which is the professional author or the published author network. So they have different levels in RWA, y'all, and there's pre-published. I think that term is better than unpublished because everybody's striving to be published. I think we're a
Absolutely.
professional organization. That's what we want is, you know, pages. So, excuse me. So let me ask you this: when you write, I know you said that you, because you're a teacher, you don't have a lot of time to write. How do you make that time sacred, if you will? How do you tell the family? Do you just get up before anybody's awake, or?
Exactly. Then I don't have to deal with it. Is I get up before everybody's awake, and I luckily I'm one of those people that can just wake up. I don't need coffee or anything. I'm a morning person, because I've been doing this for a little while, and now that I'm published, the kids and the husband are a little bit easier about. I really have to work right now, and they're like, okay, well, I'll go someplace else. So it's a little bit easier right now than it used to be.
Very good. Now, what did you find when being published? What was the most? A lot of people have this idea that when you get published, you get to sit back and go, be free, little book, be free. But I know it's not that easy anymore. What did you find the most challenging part about being a new author, a new Harlequin author? Did they do everything for you, or did you have some things that you had to do?
Well, they don't do any publicity. So anything that I did, I made lots of little promotional images and things, and did a whole lot of Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of it. They don't do any of that kind of stuff. But they're really good in terms of editorial information, which is really what I was most concerned with. If I was going to put a book out there with my name on it, I wanted to make sure that it was as good as it could possibly be. And so that was more concerning to me, as I wanted to make sure I had strong editors before it went out. But the rest of it, anything that was promotion involved, that was all me. But the thing that I thought was difficult is you want so much for so long to get published, and it feels like it's never going to happen. And so I had a countdown on my phone forever, that is when it was coming up. But at the same time, you're terrified because it means your book is out there and anybody who wants to read it can read it. And if they want to tear it apart, it's absolutely their right to do it. And you just have to suck it up and let it happen. So that for me was difficult. Super excitement that it was actually happening, and then realizing that I had to just back away and let whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, that sucking it up and letting it happen, guys out in the audience, if you Google authors behaving badly, you will find
people who don't know how to suck it up and let it happen.
You will find people with very thin skins who go off on reviews and then get their followers to go off on the reviews too. And it's never a good thing. I have actually responded to a review recently on my Secrets of the Mystic Grove, or excuse me, Fairy Tale Lenormand, because somebody said the booklet was 10 pieces of useless paper. And I was like, but it's a whole lot more than 10 pieces of paper. It's like a little tiny booklet, but it's chunky. And so I said, I just want to make sure that you're reviewing the right Lenormand, because there are two with the same name. And I would hate for you to have our deck or their deck and think it's our deck, because they're different. Mm-hmm. And even when I did it, I was like, okay, be really careful, because you don't want to come across sounding like that crazy woman,
right?
That I can be, because in my head, of course, I'm shrieking, you're an idiot, you don't know anything. But they do have a right to dislike intensely something we do, right?
Yes.
Now, what about contests? Because you've won a major contest not once but twice, right?
Well, I was a finalist twice, and I have won other local contests as well, but the Golden Heart is the big national, or I guess international contest that RWA has, and I finaled in that one twice. But that's another one where you sort of, I think contests are helpful in that they teach you to have a skin, because if you go through the contest route and you do it a lot, you end up with a whole lot of judges who just rip you apart. And you have to be able to look at it, and many of the things, like I'm an English teacher, so when they tell me that my grammar is wrong, I know, well, actually it's not, But for that reader, it was true at the time that she wrote it. So if it's true for her, what is it that she's picking up on that I should be changing to make sure that nobody else has that same sort of problem with my sentence structure, with, you know, whatever it was that I was doing. So I think contests help in that it is able to give you a view of your work for people who don't know you and love you. And it allows you to hopefully build up that thick skin that not everybody's going to love your work. And that's just all there is to it. But still, even if they don't love it, what can you learn from their reaction to it to hopefully make your work better?
Exactly. My writing partner and I, Kay, we write as Mary Lou Mann, had a male. It was a romantica, so it was very hot, very steamy story about a cop and a stripper, and there was a murder mystery in the beginning. Well, as writers, we fell in love with our characters like we always do, and so we just wrote the hell out of them. And we released the book, and we thought it was one of the best books we'd done up to that date. We really loved it. And one of the first reviews was they gave it a 3, and they said, I might have given it a 4, but they never solved the mystery. And the whole reason they got together was the stripper was a suspect. So, yeah, that was worse than our moving stairs. We had another where the heroine goes up the stairs into the house, and when she comes out, she steps out onto the porch. You know, that's renovation, baby. That's a lot of renovation.
Yes.
But that's stuff we should have caught as authors. It's not our editor's job to catch stuff like that. I mean, maybe the murder mystery, maybe.
Right.
But she also kind of fell in love with the characters and just we just rode with the characters. I mean, we completely left out the cop stuff. So we want to rewrite that one and we're going to self-publish, but good gravy.
Yeah. You know, and I think that's why it's important to get editors, because I'm honestly the same way. For me, it's all about character when I'm writing and when I'm reading. I love to basically delve into the character. And so I need somebody else to say, whoa, your plot is a big old mess right here. You need to do something about that. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you. I needed that. Thank you for pointing me in the right direction.
Truck we just drove through your plot.
Right.
Plot hole.
Exactly.
And I've told this story before that there's a very famous author who is a historical writer. And in one of her historicals, or maybe one of her contemporaries, she writes both genres, the hero, who's just had a really crappy day, in the book it says, he turns out the light, got into bed, and pulled up the sheep. This changes the entire story at this point. Okay. And nobody caught it. You know? It's like, who was it? Christina Dodd that has the 3-armed heroine?
Right, right.
Yeah. And people, if you find Candle in the Wind by Christina Dodd with a 3-armed heroine, snag it. And then send it to me. It's not worth a thing. Well, you know, it could work. So, Seana, what I want to do today is do one of the spreads out of Promo Alert, the book.
Yeah.
Back of the book, y'all, there are some writer spreads. And the biggest mistake I made with this book is I did not put in graphical layouts in the back. You've got them in the front of the book. You've got graphical layouts where they're there, but not back here. So that's my bad, because it really needs that. The Celtic Cross is what we decided to do for Seana today. And this is that correct? Am I right on that?
Yes, yes, you're correct.
Okay. And the Celtic Cross is, for Seana's purposes, I'm going to just tell her, she is familiar with the pagan woo-woo spiritual stuff. Mm-hmm. She writes paranormal, right?
Right.
This is the most commonly recognized spread. It is mistakenly called a gypsy or Romany spread. It actually isn't. The Rom probably they didn't use tarot cards in the first place. They used more likely playing cards and did rows. And they're like is it past, present, future? But each row had a meaning, and then each column had one. So the Celtic cross probably came from the Golden Dawn around the turn of the 19th century.
Oh, okay.
Or 20th century. In the 1900s,
okay.
20th century. Math is hard. So, and we will try to take some questions at the end, y'all. So if you have questions, get them ready. And remember, when I ask for them, they must be in all capitals or I will miss them. I see that Nathan is in the chat. So Nathan, if you'll be my moderator, baby, I would appreciate it. And what I'm going to do is I need to know the name of the character and the genre that we're reading for.
Will Oliver, and it's for contemporary romance.
Okay. Now, I'm going to read for Will. And what I'm doing here is just as if I was doing a reading for him as a live person sitting in front of me. So the first card is the situation now, kind of what he's facing now. If I say you, that's because I'm talking to you as well. So I just went over. Okay. The first thing is the Four of Air. That's the nest egg card, and it's the card of needing time out and needing to relax. I'm trying to get it to. So it's 4 little robin's eggs in a nest. But this card really talks about him feeling like he needs to put up walls and take a break, and like he's had a lot of stuff coming at him. And he's been almost maybe even forced into a timeout. There could have been a physical injury that's been done to him that he has to kind of, he was a professional motorcyclist, wrecked his bike, and now he's got to wait for his elbow to heal up or something along those lines.
Okay.
The idea of the 4 eggs here is also about ideas he has that he wants to do something with. There could also be the idea that he had an idea stolen, and so now he's really protecting the ideas he has. He doesn't want to let them out in case somebody else runs with it. The next card is the crossing card, and feel free to jump in and talk at any point that something pings or doesn't ping.
Okay.
The crossing card is, some people call it prevailing winds. That's what I think of it as. It's whatever's pushing this 4 of swords idea. And it's a pretty little child of water. Now, I'm going to tell you that the woman who did this is a Pacific Northwest, oh, come on and focus card. Camera. It doesn't focus because I talk and I move too much. Oh, I give up. But anyway, this picture is actually the artist Joanna Colbert's granddaughter who lives in Maine. So
nice.
And this is the card of relationships and love letters and romance. So it's really interesting to see a romance card. Of course, we're talking about a romance, so I would expect some romance.
Right.
But there may be somebody younger involved that's going to kind of have some emphasis in the story. I don't know that it's necessarily a baby girl, a little bitty child, but the page can be like a youth. So there may be somebody in there that he's responsible for on some level that's going to affect his need to relax and be calm. This is the agitator in his life, right? Like every time you sit back with your cup of coffee to get really calm and the cats have a fight, that kind of disruptive situation. That's the card of Cancer. There's a hermit crab on there. So the hermit crab leads me right back to the idea of him almost being like Shrek. I just want to be alone in my space and not deal with all the outside crap. So that's kind of what I feel around these 2 cards.
Okay.
Nathan, pay attention. I said I just want you to be a moderator. Sorry, he just said, what am I supposed to do? So the bottom card is past. Generally, it's anywhere from 6 months to 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it's the card of happily ever after. It's the card of returning home, coming back. This is a card that's celebrating the cycle of the salmon. You know, and as we all know, I'm going to see if it'll focus. Salmon swim up, they come back down, and they do what they need to do, and then they die. They become food. They feed the ground. It's a circle of, you know, the circle of life kind of thing. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I sing really badly. But this talks about his own cycle, his own. He may have returned, or he may have gone out to seek his fortune and come back and feeling kind of wrecked and kind of like, wow, that didn't work. Energy. So that's the basis. That's his foundation of what's currently, you know, it's kind of like that itchy shirt I talk about in the ordinary world. Our hero in the ordinary world, everything looks pretty good, but there's an itchy shirt or there's something bugging them. And that's the only reason they step out of their ordinary world, is because of that little itch.
And that totally fits, because he is coming back home, and there are love letters and all the rest of that. And that's really what I was needed you for, is to work on that internal conflict of what it is. External conflict, I got no problem with. It's the internal of what's actually going on with Will.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it looks like he went out, you know, kind of conquering hero and came back prodigal son. So, yes, you're doing questions, Nathan. Now, this is recent past. It happened anywhere from yesterday to 6 months out. This is the time.
Okay.
So, and it's a fun card. It's the Ace of Fire. Okay, are you going to focus or not?
There we go. Got him.
Card.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's our little snake. It's a gorgeous card. He's coming out of the shell. He's emerging, and this is Will has finally said, kind of like, you know, when you say, "I'm going to meditate. I'm going to meditate." Okay. Go out and run because nobody will let me meditate. He's made the decision to put himself out there on some level, but it's a very base level. His emotions aren't kicked in. He's still got that protective barrier, you know, and I think that he's a little hesitant because he expects to get bopped on the nose again and told, you know, you're not doing it right. Why did you think you could do that? You know, almost like going to Hollywood because a director said, come out, you're great. I want to do screenshots with you, and getting out there and the director's going like, who are you? You know, it's a real big takedown. So it's on some level, he's got an injured pride. And so I don't know if you know what his birth sign or not, but he kind of feels like a Leo who's had their feet knocked out from under him. You know,
okay.
And so he's shaky. He doesn't trust when somebody says, hey, that's a good job. He's like, well, yeah, when are you going to pull the rug out from under me? Kind of. Okay, reptiles. Somebody says, oh, I came in at the right time. Now, above him is the goal card. And I call this the reach card because you have to stretch and reach for it. It's not the apple on the ground. It's the apple just a little above. And if you really want it, you have to go for it. And he got a really, really interesting one because this is lightning.
Okay.
And lightning is in this deck. It's the tower card. Let's see if I can get it to focus at all. No, because I wiggle too much.
There we go. Got it.
Okay. So it is, but in this, Joanna, the creator of the deck, has repurposed this card as inspiration, as that flash of brilliance. Is he a writer?
No, professor.
Okay. He's looking, the thing he's reaching for is that spark, that ignition that will re-engage him. He may be in there. And I'm sure you've had classes like this when you get in there and teach class and you're just doing the bare minimum. You know, you're not engaged on any level. And he knows that he needs to be engaged. He knows that he needs to be reconnected and get his
Mhm.
fire and his joy and his passion back. So that's kind of what he's reaching for, is to figure out, you know, where's the switch? How do I turn it back on? It got turned off. How do
Mhm.
I turn it back on? Does somebody else have to? There's a whole bunch of questions he can play around with on how do you get re-engaged, and find your joy with doing something again. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've done something you loved and somebody's either done something or something where they just suck the joy out of
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Unfortunately.
so, yeah, it's not something I would wish on anybody, even my worst enemies. It's just crappy.
It absolutely is.
Um, but that's when lightning's at the top. That's a pretty big card. That's major arcana. It's also something that's a little bit out of his purview. When it's a major arcana that he's reaching for, it's going to take kind of a miracle, traumatic event, something huge to kick him back in.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a big deal. He's right now, 10 man. He's outwardly there, but inside he doesn't feel connected. I would imagine it's something like what post-traumatic stress syndrome feels like.
Okay.
And I have a version of PTSD, but not to that extent. Mine's relationship based. So, but just that hollowness of, I'm here, everybody's having a good time, they're all at the church picnic, and I can't even taste the barbecue chicken. I can't even make it taste right. So he needs to be sparked.
Okay.
The next card is near future. It's anywhere from tomorrow to 6 months out. Nice. It's the gardener. And this is actually, her name is Colleen. She's somebody I actually know in real life. I believe this is Colleen. But she goes out and replants. She goes out to forests that are heavily either, storm damaged, people damaged, whatever, and replants. She puts new trees out as part of her spiritual practice.
That's lovely.
It's a wonderful thing. She's a wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful human being. She really is. The Seven of Earth is the card of the gardener. It's a card of the pause between really hard work and really hard work again. Because it's a female, this may represent the heroine. And it may be that they meet when she's doing good work, and she does good work for the sake of doing good work. She doesn't do it because the church says so, because her goddess says so. She just does it because it's right.
Right.
She's probably earthy because he's like I keep coming back to spark. He's like the barbecue pit where everything's died down except that one little coal, and it's going to take something big to get it to flame up again. So she's going to be the gasoline on that. Some of his reactions at first may not be romantic. They may be more like, who do you think you are doing that to me, kind of stuff.
Right.
But the shovel here shows that this is coming to be some hard work. She may actually trick him into helping her. He may have to, it may be a challenge of, oh yeah, you're a professor. Well, do you ever do any real work? Right? So
Right.
the whole academic egghead kind of thing. The next part of the Celtic cross, that's the cross part. And the next part is what's called the scepter. This is the crown or cross, and then the scepter is what goes up the side. It's 4 more cards.
Okay.
The bottom card is how people see Will. This is what they say behind his back when he's not around. It can be good or bad. And when I'm reading for somebody who is in the flesh, I always say, do you want to see this card? So would Will want to see this card?
I think he would, yes.
Okay. Actually, a really good card. That's the Sun. So they still see him as Golden Boy. They still see him as, reason to look at our town, when they put up signs and say Miranda Lambert lived here, that kind of stuff.
Right.
The sun, and I tell people the sun card is about looking at the sunflowers follow the sun, right? They follow the brightest thing in the sky.
Right.
She's what they're following.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually Joanna herself. That's somebody took a picture of her and she put it into this card. But the sunflowers are following her.
Mm-hmm.
He may be uncomfortable with the fact that inside he feels, if you will, a failure, or he didn't live up to his own potential. And yet everybody else is treating him as if he did.
Mm-hmm.
So either the whole story hasn't gotten back, or there's some story issue of how he sees what he did and how the town sees what he did.
Okay. That
So
fits with what I have for him.
Okay, good. So that could be uncomfortable. He's going to have to deal with shadow self. And because of how people see him.
Mm-hmm.
The next card is hopes and fears. I'm looking to see if anybody said anything else. Okay. Is looking to see is hopes and fears. It can be either, it can be a combination. So, and it's a hope. This is the Elder or King of Water or King of Cups. The whole deck, and this is set in the Pacific Northwest. This artist is up in the Seattle area.
Okay.
So you'll see like Mount Baker and things like that in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this guy. He's got the seal here, but his hope is that he can live like his granddad or his dad did. He's got a male figure that he really respects. It doesn't have to be blood, but it's somebody who should have been blood.
Okay.
And in this guy is following his heart. He's rowing. He's not looking where he's going because he knows where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Will wants. He wants that, deep down inside, he may want that old-fashioned white picket fence, 2.5 kids and a dog kind of thing happening. But it may be that his golden boy persona doesn't match his patch sleeve cardigan and pipe that he wants. Okay. So there may be a dichotomy there that he's got to work through and have the people who have put him up on a pedestal, he may need to get them to, either get up on a pedestal with him or let him get down. It's kind of lonely being up there. So the next card is the obstacle. I actually call it the hurdle.
Okay.
And I call it a hurdle. If you've ever watched track being run, you can go over a hurdle, you can crawl under it, you can run around it, but you cannot go straight through it because that puppy bangs your shins.
Mm-hmm.
You have to negotiate this. So this is what he has to negotiate. I'm laughing because I've already looked at it.
Okay.
He has to negotiate the idea that he wants to be this person. And this is the 9 of fire. He's in perfect balance. All his chakras are aligned. Kundalini is rising. He's in his cave. He is the perfect guru. Will's world is probably messy and chaotic and full of, we went back to that, that disruption, that nest egg thing, right? So in his idea of what his world is supposed to look like, even if it is that professor with the pipe and the patched, I love those coats.
Elbows,
I don't know what they're called, but the elbow patches, right?
Right.
So his vision for himself may need to get slapped upside the head with a monkey wrench by a really cute heroine. It's going to show him that, life is messy, it's complicated, and it's not always balanced. It's, the food isn't always perfect out of the oven. You burn stuff on the grill. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you're human.
Right.
But that's an interesting block to get that 9 of fire, because that really is the card of spiritual perfection. It's balance. It's everything's good. Traditionally, that's the card of it's the Nine of Wands, and it's often shown as being in a place of defense. You've either just fought a battle or you're fixing to fight one, and you're always on the defense. But Joanna has repurposed this card and made it more about, seeing yourself as perfectly balanced as being your best defense.
Is the hurdle that he believes he should be perfectly balanced, or is the hurdle that he can't get to perfectly balanced?
I think it's more that he thinks he should.
Okay.
And the more that he strives for that perfect balance, the more the universe is going to go.
Right.
So, when he's on his way to doing that good work for the sake of being good, and he gets a flat tire and can't show up, and so everybody thinks he ditched him.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. I was trying to be good.
Right.
But he's going to have to, I think he's got to loosen up and learn to roll with the punches a little better. Will may have a perfectionist issue going on.
Okay.
Just based on this.
Mm-hmm.
But the final card is where he lands, where he ends up, what the overall thing is. And it's an interesting card because it's another spiritual guru card. This is the Guardian of Air. She's one of the queens. She's the Queen of Swords. She is the intellectual teacher, the intellectual professor. She's very much a professor card. Mm-hmm. And she's learned that even in the chaotic world, how to be her version of perfect. Mm-hmm. So when I see this card, I have to walk it back and say that it may be that what he sees is, I keep using the word spiritually perfect, and I don't know if that hits him or not, but what his idea of it is that it's actually here. It's like people who say they meditate. I've learned to ask what type of meditation, because there's at least 4 different types. Mindfulness is only one type of meditation. And so those people who really focus on mindfulness meditation and only that and never get it, it may be because their brain isn't geared towards that type of meditation and they need to do a different kind. Mm-hmm. So he's just got to learn what his perfection looks like and maybe stop using somebody else's example of perfection.
Absolutely. That works with what I have. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good. So what did you think about this? What did this do for you? How did it affect what you're doing?
I found it immensely helpful, honestly, because there were a number of personality issues that you brought up and conflict issues that you brought up. And while you were talking, I was also spinning, since I know the details of the story, how that would fit. And when I said that one of my issues was coming up with internal conflict for Will as to why these two can't get together, some of the first cards that you had about I don't remember was what the conflict was at the beginning, fit perfectly in terms of why he would feel as though he'd been betrayed. So I was then working with, okay, so at his previous university, this is what happened, and that's why he's going into the current, he's come home now, he's at a new university, but that would be why he's bringing the luggage along with him as to why he isn't trusting, because of what you just made me think of as to what his problem is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now,
it also helps me with the beginning of it, because at the beginning, he's too excited to see her, and you sort of can tell from the beginning, like, well, why can't they be together? I mean, other than the most obvious of him being a professor and her being a student, but she's a 27-year-old student, right? So she's not a teenager anymore. But this now helps as to the behavior he should have with her at the beginning, the sort of the walls that you were talking about being up, and where those walls came from.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it sounds like a book I want to read because I like contemporary. So, now, what would you say to somebody who was just beginning to write or had been writing, or maybe thinking about putting a first book out there, whether it's with a traditional publisher or indie or self-published? What's the basic things you think a new writer should know?
Hmm. That's hard. I think probably one of the most helpful things, again, whether you're traditional or whether you're indie, is to have a critique partner that you trust. Have that person who can look at your work and not just say, it's great, but that can actually pull it apart and say, yeah, I really liked it, except right here, this doesn't work. And based on what's happened in the story, I don't believe that she would actually behave this way. All those sorts of things that when you're in it and it's yours, it's sometimes you can be blind to it because you know the characters so well, you know the story so well, that you miss some of those little errors in logic or in plot that other people can pick up on. So I think critique partners and editors, if you're going to indie publish, I think you need to hire an editor to look at your work to make sure that it is ready to go out and for the world to see. But at the beginning, I say to write what it is that you love and that you're passionate about. When I first started trying to write years ago, it was sort of always a dream to do it, and I was trying to write literary fiction because that was what I read, and I was an English teacher and all that sort of stuff. And so I figured that's what I was supposed to do. And I'd start, and and then I decided, no, these people are boring. I don't like this story. This is stupid. If I don't want to read it, I don't want to write it. No one else is going to want to read it. And then it took a while before I hit on romance. And I realized, oh, I love these books. I used to love these books when I was younger. How did I forget that these books existed? And then I just binged on a million different kinds of romance, and all these ideas started coming up like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to write because this is what I love, and these are the stories I love, these are the characters I love. And I would come up with an idea, and a week later I was still writing and I still like the idea. I'm like, oh, there you go. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, not that other stuff. So pick what it is that means something to you and go with it.
I love magical realism stories.
Yes, absolutely.
So Addison is the last name I can't think, but she
Sarah.
writes these. Yeah, she writes amazing. And
she
I'm
does.
Like, I want to write those, and I tried to start one, and the same thing was like, no, I don't want to write them. I want to read them.
I just want to read them. Exactly.
Same with historicals for me. If I could write historicals, I would, but I'm a history major. And so I have a real fear. That's my perfectionist coming up, is that I'm like, oh, good Lord, I'll put Churchill, in the wrong time period, or make a quote or do oh Lord,
anachronism.
Time warp. Thank you. I couldn't get the word to come out.
Yeah.
Where I've got somebody in the Regency period wearing a wristwatch kind of stuff. Right. So I just won't, but I will read them. Yes. Man, I'll read them. So let's look here. And do you mind taking a few questions from folks?
No, of course not.
Okay, guys, if you would like to ask Seana a question, let's start with just 3 questions, and we'll see how time goes. But make sure you put your question in all capital letters. You know how cranky I get about that, right? Don't make the choice seeker cranky. Let's see if people are... We've got folks in, so... Oh, Chase is also in. We have one of my other moderators is in. We call him Terror Bro Goat because he is an Oklahoma boy. He's a tarot reader, and he's just so much fun. So we kind of tease him about being... I've been teasing him about being a redneck tarot reader, and I drink out of a mason jar. So anybody has a question, pop it up now, or we're going to wrap this puppy up.
It's funny, friends and I met with a psychic, maybe 2 weeks ago. And that was one of the things she said was that she saw a film of either this book or my paranormal. It sounded like she was more toward paranormal, but that's the one that doesn't have a publisher, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's something to hope for, right?
Heck yeah. I mean, that's like the frosting on that big
absolutely
prize. Okay, we've got folks in, and we have a lag, so I have to wait for the lag, and I am blinding myself with this pink light. Good Lord.
I'm having the same problem. The light's just slanting into my room. in a way that I can see is just making my face flame up.
It's okay. If you had a flashlight, you could do this.
Exactly. It was a dark and stormy night.
Right? Tell me a little bit about your paranormal while we're waiting. Where's it set? What is it, urban fantasy or is it paranormal or?
Well, you know, it started out more as urban fantasy, and in the edits, I think it's become a little bit more paranormal. But I still think it kind of straddles the fence, which is probably why it's having a hard time. I keep getting editors saying that they love it, except not sure they can find a home for it. It's set in San Francisco, and our main character is a werewolf. She runs a bookstore bar, and it is kind of in the cliffside, so it's down at water level. San Francisco Bay is sort of smashing up on the windows. It is a bookstore bar only for other supernaturals, so all the other supernaturals in San Francisco often come there for a drink or a read. The master of the city is a vampire. She has no idea he is as powerful as he is. He's just that guy who comes to the bar every night and chats her up. And it isn't until the beginning of the book is a dead body that washes up into the window and sort of smashes against the window, that we get into her backstory and how she was attacked and why she has all the scars on her body that she does, and because the body that they found is similarly torn apart, and it sort of pulls her back into how she ended up a werewolf in the first place and someone who may be after her.
Ooh. Well, I hope the publisher does find it, or that you self-publish it, one or the other, because it sounds fabulous. Now, we do have a question from Chase, who did not pay attention, and he did not put it in all capital letters. And I'm going to have to beat him when I see him, because I think I'm going to see him in a couple of weekends. Aha. So he asks, how do you feel about writers who write different genres, romance, science fiction, like jump from genre to genre with every book written?
I personally have no problem with that. I think whatever story is in your head that you really want to tell, go tell it. But I know, at least from my agent's perspective, in terms of the rest of the world, they want you to stick with one genre for a while to build up a name in that genre before you branch out. Like my agent, I asked her, well, should I just self-publish my paranormal then? And she said, you know what, let's wait. Let's do a couple more contemporary romances so you can build up sort of a following for that before you branch off into a different genre. So that's her perspective in the business, that's the better way to do it. But I completely understand following your muse and deciding whatever it is that you're interested in and writing that book. You may have to shelve it for a little while until you bring it out, but there's nothing to stop you from writing it.
That's a very good point. And when I think about it, Kay and I, as Mary Lou Mann, we write the paranormal and we write contemporary. We also have an urban fantasy kind of thing, kind of bouncing. So, but there's an easier thing, I think, than for us just to go from romance to hard sci-fi. You know, because particularly in the hard sci-fi community, there is I don't want to say a prejudice, but there is sort of a pushback on bringing too much romance and too much soft stuff into hard sci-fi. Like Asimov, I think people would have run screaming if he put out something like Heinlein did. And Heinlein wrote romances. I don't care what anybody says. The man wrote romances. If you've ever read his book Friday or Time Enough for Love, they're romances. So... But I think if Asimov had tried that, I can't think of anything he wrote that I would even think was even close to a romance.
And I think there's just a pushback on that word, that there may be lots of books that have romantic elements or romantic storylines, but as soon as you use the word romance, people associate that with lesser quality work and not particularly important, frivolous, therefore we don't want it.
Yeah. And I'll throw back at them every time. There have been Harvard and Yale and major universities have done studies on people who read romance, women particularly who read romance. Romance has been shown to save lives.
Absolutely.
they see there's a better way, they see there's a way
Yes.
out, and they can take it.
Right.
So, you know, I tell people, I'm a lifesaver.
Yeah, no, romance is all about empowerment and finding what is that makes you happy and going for it, not staying in that situation that makes you miserable.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, you know, you read stuff where there's always a happily ever after, and people treat each other with respect. You know,
Right.
maybe they're shitty to each other in the beginning, but they get over it and they
Right.
apologize and they go on.
Right.
So we do have another question. This is from James. Where do you find your inspiration for characters?
I have no idea. I'm one of those people that I think it's probably true of all writers where we just have conversations going on in our heads, and I'm one of those people. And I'll have huge arguments with my husband that he knows nothing about because I've just decided, you know, I made up something and then I ran with it, or just other random things that come up, and I create whole conversations about it. So for me, character always starts with their voice. And then I start to sort of fill in around who they are, who is this person that, you know, this fictional conversation that's going on in my head. And that's usually where I start to go. But I don't know where that comes from, you know, God, goddess, I don't know. I think they present themselves to us and we either latch onto them or ignore them.
I read a T-shirt or a meme somewhere that said, writers aren't crazy, we just respond to the voices in our heads.
We're listening.
Yeah, and I do have my writing partner, the first book we sold, and we sold the book before it because of that, but that book came about because she took a codeine-based cough syrup and had codeine dreams that night. Kid you not, that is how the second book main character came up. So
it's like Coleridge all over again,
right? So, take a little more codeine. Okay, so let's see. So that looks like the only question so far. I'm waiting to see if anybody else. Nathan, don't worry about it. We'll blame Chase. He's also a moderator. Nathan says he's not doing a good job because he's on his phone. That's okay, sweetie. I'll forgive you, but not Chase. So for you would be, have you ever had a story where you loved the characters but hated the story, so you had to move the characters to a different situation, a different place and time, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually most recently, when I first talked to you about the fact that I had a character named Arwen, that was a story I was working on, and I loved her, and I thought it fit perfectly. But then the more I was working on it, I realized my first book is a romantic comedy. The follow-up can't be dark because it's too jarring to go from romantic comedy and then the very next book be really dark. So I tried changing her and lightening her up, but then it just wasn't her anymore and it wasn't right. So I realized that I needed to change it, that she couldn't be in that story in that particular town. She couldn't be in the follow-up book. That had to be a completely different story.
Yeah. We've done that where we're writing something, we're like, oh wow, this went way off the other book.
Right.
And it's hard when you're writing a series or you're writing a small town, because you get into like my friend Anna J. Stewart. She writes for Arwen, I believe, and she has Butterfly Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And they're light, they're sweet, they're feel good. You fall in love with these characters. And if she wrote one where, you know, somebody came in as he'd murdered somebody and he had to redeem himself, we'd be going,
exactly.
He needs to go to J.D. Robb because he is in the wrong book.
That's exactly right. And that was my problem with Arwen.
Yeah.
Like, no, she was an abuse victim, and it was too dark. I couldn't have her in that story. And I didn't want to lose her because I love Arwen, which means it has to be a different book.
Yeah. I love Arwen too.
There you go.
let's see. Bad chase. They're being silly. I got James, y'all. We're having the lag is happening. So you and I are talking. I'm watching the chat, and it's behind. It's like 20 or 30 seconds before what we're talking about. Wow. As a writer, I can describe shit. What do you think about, this may be a touchy subject, first person versus second person versus third person?
It is funny you should ask that question, because I have been dithering about that for the last week, because the book that I've written is dual narrative first person. And I had been told, and Harlequin basically doesn't do first person, but they really liked my book and they wanted it, and they wanted to basically put it out there. And this new book that I'm writing right now, I had been told that Harlequin wants third. I'm like, okay, no problem. You know, the Boston one that I had you read for is third person. And so I started it in third. And then I saw something from the senior editor of the line that I was working with, saying that she really wants first person dual narrative. I'm like, oh, well, okay, so do I go back to what I've done before? At this point I had like the first chapter. I'm like, so I kept going back and forth. Is it first person? Is it third? Is it first or is it third? And I basically went with, okay, the senior editor said that that's what she's looking for. That's what I wrote in my first book. At least it hopefully sets me apart than all the other third person. So let's go for it. But I enjoy reading both. I know some people have issues. There are a lot of people who really don't like first person, and I get that. But first person allows you an immediacy that third person doesn't. But sometimes having that distance of third person allows you to tell a story much more completely. Because with first person, I can only tell you about what happened from my character's perspective, and their perspective could be skewed, right? I could have a flawed first person. And so it really kind of depends on the story you're trying to tell, which again is why I've been dithering back and forth as to whether I should go 1 or 3. 2 is just weird. I haven't tried to do that one. The whole book of you. And then you did this. I think, didn't Daniel Handler do that for his Why We Broke Up? I think that is all in second person. And that was different.
It holds me off as a reader. I can't engage. I used to really hate first person. I mean, seriously, had an old-fashioned, old-school And I started listening to audiobooks. And I grabbed an audiobook, and I didn't realize it was first person. Well, I couldn't stop listening to it. It's Jane Yellowrock.
Oh, yeah. I love those books.
Yeah, I'm right now listening to the most recent one, Cold Rain, which is, if those European vamps don't eventually get here, I'm going to lose my shit. But, I literally sat in the car and thought, the last 2 books were about these people getting here. So, but it's first person. And there's another, and I listen to a lot of YA. And there's a young adult by Cresley Cole called...
Oh, yeah. Her series is great. The Poison Princess series?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's y'all, if you have won a really awesome series, it's first person, but Evie, the narrator, is, well, let's just say she's a cheerleader who gets her butt kicked. And it's good. It's got cliffhangers, so you gotta watch out for those. If you're not a cliffhanger lover, definitely has cliffhangers. So the last book, I'm still biting my nails over, and I read it 3 months ago.
And teenagers love first person, so you'll find lots of YA written in first person.
And I wonder if that's a change, because when I was a teenager, first person wasn't a thing.
Right.
I mean, I'm 56, so I don't remember it. I don't remember any stories I read being first person.
Well, there wasn't that much YA period back in the day, back when I was a teenager either. didn't exist really. You know, it was a couple of different authors who did it, and that was pretty much it. But I have lots of students who will tell me, "Oh, it's not first person. I hate reading this." Okay, never mind. And it's for some of them, it's a block in picking up the book if it's not first person.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's because we have a more immediate society these days. You know, we have, you know, microwaves. We have cable TV that you can flip 15 channels in a second to see what's on. So I wonder if that has something to do with the whole idea of why first person is so much more prevalent now.
Yeah, much more engaging. And maybe because the books they read in their classes are the more literary fiction that's all third person, and the YA is written about teenagers like themselves dealing with situations like themselves, and the I is puts them right into the situation, right into whatever the conflict is.
Because my niece, who is turning 16 this year, loves dystopian. She likes, she's very, very smart. And I went and asked her, I said, well, have you read The Hunger Games? And she said, and I quote, I did, but I really like the Divergent series better. I think it's better written. And she was 14 years old when she told me this. I was like, wow, we got a literary critic on our hands. But her mother and I are both readers. So
yeah. I love Divergent too. I think it was awesome.
Yeah. I actually have only read part of that. I tore through The Hunger Games. I resisted it.
Yeah.
Boy, did I resist it. But let's see. Lag is in the brain. Yeah, we're lagging bad guys. But let me not get off on The Hunger Games, because, man, I'll go on that forever. And then I'll talk about why I don't like Twilight. But I want to thank you, Seana, for letting me have you be my guinea pig for the Celtic Cross and showing off how that works for a character. It's also, of course, a spread that a lot of readers do for clients. So if you ever write a book about a tarot reader, that's one they'd use more than likely.
And I'm going to. I will have one.
Very cool.
Yes.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for talking to us. Y'all, this was Seana Kelly. I've got her website in the description box, and also her Amazon page. Please go by and click follow, because one of the things it does is it helps the algorithm on Amazon. It helps her get found better the more followers she has. If you like contemporary, buy the book. If you buy the book, please review it.
Please.
I cannot emphasize how important it is.
Yes.
To review books, because Amazon doesn't see books that don't have a minimum of 25 or 50 reviews. So, and that's a lot. You can sell 1,000 books, and if you get 2 reviews,
right,
your book dies. So
yes,
that's my plug on why you should follow and review. But
thank you
very much.
No, thank you for having me. This has been hugely helpful for me. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to do this with you.
Absolutely. And seek joy, y'all. Pass it on.